Hi everyone, this is Counseling 2250, Corey Chapter 1, Invitation to Personal Learning and Growth. So what this chapter is about is kind of an introduction to what the overall course is going to be when it comes to this book by Corey. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the introduction. To make changes in your life, you need to first access where you are now. So because many of you guys are going to be working in the human services industry, we're going to be helping other people. We also want to make sure that you yourself are in a good place. Okay, because if you are still struggling through your own lives, which, we all do, but if you don't really understand yourself or life, how is it that you're going to be able to help other people? You might be able to help other people on a superficial level. However, we're talking about, deep, meaningful connections and stuff like that. So we want to know, is your life satisfying? Are you getting what you want out of life? Do you sense a need to make changes in your own daily life? And then do you have an understanding of how your actions affect others? So what that means is we are humans and we are social. That means that we interact with a lot of people. Are you able to do that in a way that is positive, healthy, and helpful for yourself as well as the community around you? All right, choice and change. Reflect on the quality of life and see if you want change. Okay, so now start to think about your life. Are you happy with your life? I know that you have goals and everything like that, but overall in general, are you happy with your life? Socrates says that the unexamined life is not worth living. So what that means basically is that if you don't think about and understand your own life, you know, is there a purpose in your life? Is there any meaning in your life if you don't think about it? Okay. Examine your values and your behaviors. So let's think a little bit about what crises have you faced. And some of you guys have faced major crises, okay? I'm not taking any of this lightly at all. How did these crises affect your life? So basically, think about how the trauma or, the worries and stuff like that. It doesn't always have to also be a negative thing either. Just major changes in your life, and then how did it affect your life? Did they represent a significant turning point for you? So when these things happen, did it affect the way that you behaved, the way that you saw life? And we want you to start to think about that and kind of really make it concrete so you really understand what's going on. So what brings us happiness? Making choices for yourself and being in control of your life is important to the level of happiness. So right there, if you think about that, making choices for yourself and being in control of your life is important to your level of happiness. Because if you're not in control of your life, are you really happy? So we want you to be able to take basically charge of your own life and make those decisions that make you happy so that you can be happy. You cannot ignore the reality that you are a social being. As humans, and I'm sure now that you've all lived through or in a pandemic, you'll realize that you probably missed a lot of your friends, right? Or your loved ones, the ones that you couldn't see because of, let's say, isolation and stay at home and all that stuff. So that basically says that we are social beings. We interact with a lot of people all the time. Most of us do. Not all of us, but most of us do. Your decisions will be influenced by your relationship with the significant people in your life. So the people that you grew up with, the people that you love, friends, partners, and whatever it is, are people who are going to really influence how you react to things, how you think about things, because they're going to share or behave, and you're going to be able to observe those things, and then you might take part of that into your own life, and then that's how they can influence you. And of course, unless you know and care about yourself, you will struggle to connect with others in a meaningful way. So again, that idea that we were talking about earlier, which is, if you don't know who you are, you're confused, it's really going to be hard for you to make a strong connection with other people because you don't really know who you are just yet, right? And when you have those connections, it's probably usually a connection with someone who feels confident and knows who they are. So I just want you to start really examining and starting to open up and think about your life and get to know yourself. All right, Philip Huang said that happiness entails possessing a healthy balance of both self-esteem and other esteem. So there's two types that we're talking about. I think we all know what self-esteem is, right? Confidence, believing in yourself and stuff like that. Other esteem is respect, acceptance, caring, valuing, and promoting others without reservation, which basically means that you are willing to help other people without demanding something to get back to you. Okay, it means you are willing to give to other people without demanding and receiving something back. Okay, because then that's more of a trade than it is an other esteem where you're willing to do that. And that's what the helping profession's all about. If you think about it, right? When you see a client or when you're helping a client, are you expecting them to have to help you back? Or are you there because you do want to help other people and that makes you feel good? Okay. America emphasizes the self, self-sufficiency, and independence. We also need to make connection with others in love, work, and community. Do not confuse other esteem with self-gain, which is what we were talking about before, which is to get something back. Caring for others can be rewarding and in itself, and others are likely to reciprocate. So maybe if you're willing to give and help other people, and when you're in need, maybe they will give back to you, right? And that'll be wonderful because they know that you were helpful when they needed, the assistance. And now they see that you might be struggling right now. So they're going to go, you know what, let me help you back, right? So that's a different type of relationship that we were talking about before when we talked about self-gain or to gain something back from doing something nice. Because then, is it really doing something kind just because? So what constitutes as happiness? Whiten, Lloyd, Dunn, and Hammer said that it's relative important, and then some things are somewhat important, and then there's some things that are very important. There are no simple formulas for happiness because we are all different people, so we'll all have different values when it comes to what brings us happiness. The quest for happiness is never hopeless, as many people find happiness in spite of insurmountable problems. So what that is saying is that there are people who actually have suffered a lot, have gone through traumas, but can still become happy. Okay, and we want to understand how they do that. And if you are someone who is struggling through trauma or something right now, is to know that you don't have to be stuck there for the rest of your life. If you choose to, you can actually move forward and then enjoy life and actually be happy as well. Okay, so let's talk about those three levels of happiness, okay? Relatively important would be people who might say that money is relatively important, your age, your gender, parenthood as in being a parent, intelligence, and then physical attractiveness. Do you agree? Those are things that are pretty, relatively important. Of course, obviously, it's going to be a little bit different for everyone, right? But we're just talking about these things that when people were interviewed, these are things that they say were relatively important. So somewhat important would be your health, social activity. So meaning, having friends and stuff like that, being able to communicate with them, and then of course, religion. And then there's very important. So a lot of people said love was really important. Intimate relationships. That doesn't have to be a sexual thing. It just means having a very close relationship. That's what being intimate is about. So it could be a very close friend, or it actually could be a sexual partner or a partner, and stuff like that. And there's also work is important in America, right? We kind of identify ourselves by what we do. And then there's genetics, which is very important as well, is, who you are when you were born. And that could potentially be about your ethnicity, but it also could be the fact that you are born with a disability or maybe born with a gift. It's never a negative or a positive. It's not one or the other always. Okay, it could be a combination of all the above. And of course, having a personality for a lot of people is very important. How do you guys feel about that? Do you see those three levels, and do you think that you agree with that these are the more important stuff than, let's say, money? Or are you one of those people who really loves money and you can say, I don't need love, I just want cash, right? And you could be, and that's totally fine as well. Again, these were questions that people asked and on a survey, and then this is what was common. So now we're talking about, are you ready for change? I don't know if I want to rock the boat. Some people might say that. Rock the boat is a phrase that basically means I don't know if I want to change things because then it could get a little unstable, right? Things aren't all that bad in my life. I'm fairly secure and I don't want to take the chance of losing this security. So that means I know what's going on now. I might not be happy, but at least I know what's going on. So I don't want to change anything because I don't know what it means to change, right? I'm afraid that if I start to think too much, I might overwhelm myself. It's common to have doubts and fears about making changes. It's not easy to take an honest look at your life. So these are things that are talking about the unknown, which is very common with change, right? Let's say that you decide to quit a job. You don't really know if you're going to get another job immediately, so it's a little scary. And for some people, even though they're very unhappy with their lives or let's say their jobs, they're not going to change it because they know at least what they are doing now is what it is. It's not going to change. I might be unhappy, but I can deal with it. Or are you one of those people that are willing to, let's say, go, you know what, this is not the life that I want. I'm going to do something different. And it might be scary at the beginning because I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to try it anyways. So, what kind of personality type are you when it comes to that? Are you a risk taker or are you much more comfortable when it comes to just staying where you are? And it's okay either way. I just want you to start thinking about the decisions that you make. And when you don't make a decision, that is still a decision, right? You choose not to do anything. Those who are close to you may not approve of your changes, so think about your family members or your loved ones when you want to do something different. They may put up barriers to your efforts, which means they're going to block you and try to prevent you from actually doing those things. Cultural background may make it more difficult to assume a new role and modify certain values if you choose to do so. So again, your culture, the way you would raise, sometimes if you want to make some changes, your family and the culture that your family comes from might try to put a stop for you from doing it because they don't want you to do those things. And you have to think about the family dynamic or the community dynamic in the sense of stability, because if you decide to change, that might make your parents worried or your family members, other family members worried. And so they don't want you to do that. So they're going to block you from doing those things. Anxiety increases when you think about making your own choices rather than allowing others to make it for you. So what that means is, if your parents say, study this, do that, you're being told to do these things. So it's like, okay, well, I trust my parents. I love my parents, and they're telling me to do this, even though I might be unhappy, right? However, it is going to be very anxiety filled when you decide that you're going to actually study something else or do something else instead of what your parents say, right? Because you love them, you respect them, and you don't want to disappoint them. But at the same time, you're realizing, hey, am I living my life or am I letting other people live my life for me? In the end, you choose how to perceive, interpret, and react to your situation. So let's talk about the paradoxical theory of change. And it might sound confusing when I read it to you, but if you break it down, you'll start to understand what it means. Personal change tends to occur when we become aware of what we are, as opposed to trying to become what we are not. Okay? So let's try to take that in one more time. Personal change tends to occur when we become aware of what we are, as opposed to trying to become what we are not. So what that is saying is for a person to really become that authentic self and to be happy, you need to realize who you are as a person, not who you're idealizing to become. Okay? If you're pretending to be someone else because you like that other person's life more, you're not being yourself. You're being someone else. You're being inauthentic. That's not really who you are. You might be able to achieve some things that person that influences you or inspires you, but you need to also still be yourself. That person is already there. Why are you trying to be another person when you're not that other person? They're being themselves. Maybe you should also be yourself as well. Okay? So you don't become yourself until you realize that you are not yourself because you're someone else, right? Hopefully that makes you understand what I'm trying to say. If you desire change in some area of your life, you first need to accept who and what you are. So, sometimes when we're young, and let's say if you're a minority, you might say, oh, I wish I was someone else because that person seems to have the perfect life or something like that. But the thing is, you are not accepting who you are. You're in denial. You're avoiding who you are. You are a wonderful person, right? But sometimes we get jealous or we really want that other perfect, wonderful life. And it is painful to realize that we are not that person at all. If you live in denial, it is difficult to make changes. right? So if you don't believe in what's going on, then how are you going to make any changes about yourself? Recognizing who you are at the present time is a starting point for making changes. So hopefully in this class, which is one of the earlier classes, we want you to start thinking about these things because as you grow as a student and you're learning all these different materials, we want you to start to incorporate all these things and understandings about your true self and that you love yourself as who you are. And also, if you don't like certain parts of your life, that you are inspired to go fix them or change them or alter them or better yourself. All right. Let's see. Start with small steps. Perfection is a direction, not a place you arrive, which is a really well-known phrase. Perfection is a direction, not a place that you arrive. Because for most of us, we will never be perfect. Okay. So you need to realize that now. Okay. And so that you don't disappoint yourself when you don't reach that place that you think you're supposed to be. Instead, you're trying to get better every day. Wanting to be different is a key first step. And a lot of times when counselors, meet a client, that is already right there, them coming to you because they want to change, right? And that's what is so important. That's the big first step because a lot of us don't even want to admit that we want to change or fix ourselves, even though we might be very sad or have barriers around us or experiencing trauma, and we don't want to deal with those things. So we just live in it instead because we know how that feels already. All right, self-exploration, being honest with yourself and others, thinking for yourself, making a commitment to live by your choices. Okay, and we are living in a very westernized world in America, so a lot of these things are going to be talking about in a Western point of view. However, if you're a minority, a person of color, and you feel like there's a mixture of those two because maybe you're a little bit westernized and a little bit still your own culture, and that's totally fine as well. We want you to find where you feel comfortable in who and where you are. Okay? Thinking about yourself is self-exploration. Start to, think about your life and stuff like that. I know you guys are really young, so it's okay, right? And you're going to appreciate it as you get older and experience more, meet more people about understanding who you are as a person. Making a commitment to live by your choices as well, So you say, this is my values, these are what I value, these are the things I believe in, and I'm going to live with those beliefs, okay? So again, we want you to be happy and also be who you really are. When you decide to make a life change, what is the cost and is it worth the price? Okay. For some people, let's say that they want to be their true authentic selves, but their friends are like, oh, we don't approve of that type of person. Okay. We don't want to be your friend if you're going to tell us that you're that type of person. Are you willing to lose your friends and then maybe make new ones or maybe feel a little bit alone for a while before you actually become friends with other people? And that can be a very scary moment. And that's something that we want you to think about. Only you can only you can decide what you want to change and how much change is right for you. So you're the one who decides, hey, I want to do this or I want to do that. No one else should be able to tell you those things. Maybe when you're younger or you're still living with your family and your family has a lot of influence and power over you. Maybe they pay all the bills, so of course, obviously, you're going to have to also work with them as well. And that's something you can also live with, right? So it's like, I'm in this specific circumstance and these are my only options for now. But later on, I might be able to do and work on more stuff about myself that makes me feel valued as a person to myself. And if you click right here on this link, this blue link right here, it's going to talk about a woman who is trying to lose weight. Okay, and this is only because she wants to lose weight. I'm not saying anything about body shaming anyone. And so she decided to do baby steps because let's say that you are overweight and you want to lose weight. Maybe you're 100 pounds overweight, right? You can say, I want to lose 100 pounds. But do you know how difficult that is? Right? But if you start with baby steps or small steps and say, I want to lose 3 pounds, okay? And then after a while, 3 pounds, 3 pounds, 3 pounds, 3 pounds, 3 pounds, suddenly you will maybe reach that 100 pounds, okay? But small steps are easier to achieve because it's a shorter distance, okay? And if something's not working, we might want to go, hey, what are other things I can do? But if your goal is just to lose 100 pounds, and let's say it's a month later, and maybe you only lost 3 pounds, you're gonna go, why can't I lose that other 97 pounds? that is not necessarily going to make you feel like you're succeeding. So let's talk about models for personal growth. Personal growth is the individual defines and assess his or her own growth in a lifelong process while dealing with numerous crises at various stages of life. So what that is going to start to talk about is lifespan. As you grow up, let's say from a baby to when you become, let's say, in your senior years, you're going to go through a lot of kind of like crises. Like you're going to have to come to a point where you have to make all these really scary decisions. So that's what a crisis is. And that's part of, I believe, Adler, if you've ever heard of Albert Adler, and he talks about the different places where a person goes. And these crises are not necessarily a bad thing, again, right? It's just a time for you to evaluate who you are and what kind of decisions you need to make next. Okay. And again, it's a lifelong process. When, let's say, you're younger and you go into, let's say, high school, right? Maybe do you choose to date or do you choose to study? Or when you graduate high school, do you choose to go to work or do you choose to go to college? Let's say that you're dating someone. Do you decide to break up with them because you don't really see a future with them? Or do you get married with them and want to have children with them? So do you see all these kind of major life events? Those are considered crises, okay? So crises are challenges to change and give new life meaning. Must be willing to let go of some of the old ways of thinking and acting so new dimensions can develop. So once you decide one thing, you're going to start to learn a bunch of new stuff, or you're going to accept those things into your life, and then that adds to who you are going to be as you grow older. Let's now explore the humanistic approach, which is created by a person you might have heard of. His name is Carl Rogers. He is one of the most famous psychologists, not as famous as Freud, obviously, but he's actually very, very famous because he understood the foundation of what it means to be a successful psychologist. All right, so he is associated with humanistic psychology, which is something that emphasizes the constructive and positive side of human experience, which basically means that he believes that people are good. And I hope that you also believe that people are good, okay? Sometimes things happen to people and then they make bad decisions and stuff like that, but ultimately you do believe that people are striving to actually be good. Striving for growth exists, but it's not an automatic process. So you can't just say, I want to grow and be a better person. You actually have to become that person by doing things, okay? Learning how to do things to then achieve that. Growth often involves pain and turmoil, right? It's scary, it's painful sometimes because you have to leave people that you love behind because you need to change. Struggle between our desires for security, dependence, and the pleasures of growth. Focuses on a set of philosophical assumptions about what makes life meaningful. So again, you need to start to think about what makes you happy and allow that to then guide you to where you're going to go. Positive psychology increases attention and research on positive emotions, health, hope, courage, contentment, happiness, well-being, perseverance, resilience, tolerance, and human strength. So these are all the areas where positive psychology really does focus on, right? Do you see all the positive feelings that you get when you hear all these words, or happiness, or like growth and change, but for the better, right? So you want to explore the factors that make people happy. And you will realize that things that make you happy won't necessarily make other people happy. And things that things that make other people happy won't necessarily be things that you would be happy with. So you're going to learn that we're all very different, but we're all still trying to go in that same direction. Let's talk about Alfred Adler's social orientation. So this portion of this book now, or this chapter, is really going to talk about lifespan. And Alfred Adler is known for talking about from birth to death. Okay, and so we're going to examine some of that as we go along in the first half of the semester. So Alfred Adler saw that feelings of inferiority as a source of creativity. So when you feel like you don't know much, that's going to drive you to want to know more. That's what he's saying is if you feel like you're not very good, you're going to want to be better, right? So that's why they're kind of like opposites, but they're connected at the same time. challenged fears and doubts throughout his life, shaped his own life as opposed to having it determined by fate. And there's a reason why, okay? When Alfred Adler was a young child, he was very sick. And so his doctor basically, he overheard, I believe, his doctor telling his parents that he was not going to make it, that he was probably going to die. And when he heard that, he goes, you know what? I might be sick, but I'm not going to die. Okay, I'm going to change that. And he actually became that better person because of that. So sometimes you need to hear the bad news to actually get to the good news. Okay, Adlerians, we are not the victims of fate, but are creative, active, choice-making beings whose every action has purpose and meaning. So what he is saying is when you hear someone tell you, hey, just give up, you don't give up. Right? It's kind of like the reverse psychology type thing, where you say, oh, this person is not very smart. And you're going to say, oh, yeah, I'll prove to you that I'm smart. And you might study even more, right? To become that better person that you want to be because you heard something else that was more negative. All right, rejects psychological sickness, sees people as being discouraged. So instead of actually being sick psychologically, mental health wise, it's really about because people have put you down and so you don't believe in yourself or you're feeling bummed out. Okay, Adlerians teach people better ways to meet the challenges of life's tasks, provide direction, help people change unrealistic assumptions and beliefs, and offer encouragement to those who are discouraged. So for him, he really does believe in like having a cheerleader there for you, right? If you're feeling like you're not very smart, let's talk about the things that you can do to achieve, and then let's say make you feel smart, right? So he might say something like, you know, if your parents thought you were dumb, maybe you should go to school, right? And study hard and prove them wrong. Okay, so that's not necessarily a mental thing, right? That's what he's saying. He is saying it's more about because you were bummed out that your parents said that or didn't believe in you. So now you need to believe in yourself and then achieve those things. There's also community feeling, belonging to the ongoing development of humankind. So again, we're talking about humans as social beings. So we also want to help our community too, right? And obviously we cannot, one person can help everyone. Instead, we can help a certain amount of people who are in that community and those people will help certain other people. And then you suddenly build this gigantic network. Okay, social interest is being interested in the well-beings of others as well as ourselves. So when we realize that we are not living on earth alone, that we do need other people, we need to help other people, and other people will help us, then we're now interacting with other people in a healthy way, a positive way, a growing way. Only when we feel united with others can we act with courage in facing dealing with life's problems. So sometimes there's a lot of social injustice in the world and we want to change, but we're so scared sometimes because we're alone sometimes, right? But together, let's get together as a group and let's protest something. Let's try to make change. That will make you feel braver and make you be more willing to do things that are outside of your comfort zone. The degree in which we successfully share with others and are concerned with their welfare is a measure of our maturity. So the more that you're willing to help the community, it shows that you are growing. That signs that you understand what life is really about. Let's talk about Carl Jung's depth psychology. Human personality and development is his area of interest, focuses on the inner world of the individual. So talking about the inside of each person. Humans are not merely shaped by past events, but strive for growth as well. So what he is saying is we are partly our past, our history, our families, generations before, but we're also going forward as well. We're not going backwards, we're going forward, but we know that we have a past, okay? Our current personality is determined both by who and what we have been and also by the person we hope to become. So let's say that your parents raised you a certain way. And although you respect it, it's not necessarily who you are, right? You might disagree on some of those stuff. So you appreciate that your parents tried really hard and really did love you and still love you and want the best for you, but they might not necessarily know what the best for you is. As you grow older, you'll realize these things, right? So you appreciate how you were raised when you were younger, but you also appreciate where you're going to also go because you're able to make your own decisions. So Carl Jung is very future oriented. All right. Individuation is another area where Carl Jung focuses on. That's about fully harmonious and integrated personality is the goal. So the thing is, we're all trying to be good, right? But we're not all good inside all the time. Think about the times where you have been mean or dark or bad or whatever, right? And you have to fully accept that as well because it's part of you as well. So it's this trying to reach this balance and also recognizing and being self-aware of all these things. You must be aware and accept the full range of our being. The public self is only a small part of who and what we are. So think about who you present to your people, the people around you. What kind of person are you? Do you think people think you're a very happy person? Maybe they do, right? Because you smile a lot, you laugh a lot, but inside maybe you're really sad, right? So that we need to acknowledge both sides. And it's kind of like, again, this yin and yang sign where there's a darkness and then a lightness to us as well. And it's good to have a little bit of everything because we're going to balance it because we're trying to understand who we are and grow and also understand that not everyone's always going to be happy all the time. Constructive and destructive forces coexist in the psyche. So have you ever had bad thoughts? It's okay to have those bad thoughts, right? Hopefully you don't act them out. But you also have good thoughts too, right? And those are things that maybe you would want to do. Hopefully most people would just want to do the good stuff and not the bad stuff. But again, sometimes some people do bad things. So we want to, again, think about that as a dark and a light as well. We must accept the shadow side of our nature, which are the primitive impulses. Sometimes those negative things is because that has helped humans survive this long. Okay, we can be greedy, we can be selfish because we are trying to survive, right? So those things are our past, like we said before, generations and generations and generations and generations before. If you deny the shadow, they are more likely to control us, influence our behavior. So if you pretend that it doesn't exist, it's going to be there even stronger because you're so afraid of it, as opposed to you addressing it and noticing it and knowing that it is there and acknowledging it's there, where you're like, okay, I see you there, right? But I don't want you to go out of, out of control. Instead, you're saying, I actually choose to do this instead, which is good. So again, you see that kind of balance and that struggle between the dark and the light again. So earlier we talked about humanistic psychology, and I also talked about Carl Rogers. Now let's talk about his theoretical framework, which is basically what he does as a psychologist, and it's called person-centered approach. Focuses on non-judgmental listening and acceptance as a condition for people to feel free enough to change. So what that is saying is when you meet a client as a person-centered therapist, you're not going to judge them. You're going to welcome them. And you know that even though they've done a lot of bad stuff. Let's say you were working in prison, right? And maybe that person had committed a lot of really bad crimes. Can you still welcome them into this relationship? Can you be willing to say, I know you've done some bad stuff, but I know you're also here because you want to change. So I believe in you, and so I welcome you in here. Right? You're not saying that you approve of any of the things that they did that were bad. You are accepting them as a human, and humans are flawed. You are flawed, I am flawed, and so that we have to understand that and then also be able to move forward from there. Fully functioning person tends to reflect and ask basic questions such as, who am I? How can I discover my real self? How can I become what I deeply wish to become? And how can I get out from behind my facade and become myself? Facade is basically a face, okay? Like the front of a building. Although the front of the building might look really nice, when you go inside, it might be really gross. Or it might be the other way around, where the building looks like it's about to fall apart, but when you go inside, you're like, whoa, this place is amazing. So the facade is the outside, what people see, but not necessarily what is inside or what exists. Carl also talks about being open to experience and see reality without distorting it. Again, we want to see what's really truly happening before we can actually make change. However, if we're pretending like it's not there and we're trying to make change, that thing might pop up later on, right, when you don't want it to. People are naturally social and forward-moving, strive to function fully, and have at their deepest core a positive goodness. Like we said before, we believe that people are good in the essence, okay? But things might have happened in their lives that cause them to do things that are not necessarily healthy. All right, let's talk about Natalie Rogers, person-centered expressive arts therapy. And Natalie Rogers is Carl Rogers' daughter. So she believed in movement, painting, sculpting, music, writing, and improvisation as a way to grow. Okay, creativity to grow. Imagine just like listening to your favorite songs that have changed your life. That's artwork that has somehow influenced you and opened up your mind to thinking new things, or watching a really great movie or television show that then says, oh, you know what? I never realized thinking about something that way. So again, arts is really important. This is why we don't want arts to go away, let's say during an economic downturn, because artwork tends to keep us entertained and gives us some laughter in our lives when we are really, really sad. Think about the pandemic that we're living through right now. A lot of you guys were watching television at home, right? Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, HBO Max. Why? Because, when we're feeling bad, we want a distraction, but that distraction actually might be helpful for us as well in the sense of teaching us how to grow because of the content and the materials. Used to facilitate growth and healing, using the arts in a safe, person-centered environment enables the individual to express deep emotions and feelings often inaccessible through words. Sometimes you watch a movie or you hear a song, you're like, that is exactly how I'm feeling right now. And you truly do connect with it. Have you ever heard a song that actually made you cry? Or seen a movie that actually made you cry because it was so amazing? Or your heart is racing because it's such a great feeling during a scene in a movie, right? So those are things that we're talking about when it comes to expressive arts therapy. I know a lot of you guys feel like you're not very creative, but you guys are. To be in the human service industry, you actually do have to be quite creative. You have to think of different ways to help people, right? So don't think that just because you can't draw like Picasso or whoever your favorite artist is, means that you're not creative. You are. All right, let's talk about Zerka, T. Moreno, and psychodrama. All right, psychodrama is action approach to group therapy in which people explore their problems through role playing, enacting situations using various dramatic ways of gaining insight, discovering their own creativity, and developing behavioral skills. Okay, you don't just talk about your problems, you're going to act them out, because sometimes acting us out will actually encourage us to change. So right here it says bring past, present, and future concerns to life by enacting scenarios. So this is role playing. I'm sure you love role playing, right? But you don't realize that role playing is what? Acting. And this is what psychodrama is about. It's about acting out those things. So right here, there's a link that's been hyperlinked here to the last phrase. I want you guys to stop this PowerPoint and then click on it and watch. And the example is a student who needs to finish his exam or his paper to graduate, right? So then basically what she does is she goes, you need to now pretend to be your exam and then talk to yourself. What would you say if you were the exam talking to you? I know it sounds really silly and you're going to giggle a little bit, but sometimes these exercises are actually really helpful. Okay, so I want you to have an open mind when you watch this video, and I really encourage you guys to really watch this video. All right, now we're going to talk about Virginia Satir's experiential family therapy. Sought out and listened for the reflections of self-esteem with her clients. So she was really listening to how they feel about life. A female client says that when she brought her mother into therapy, the female client regressed to a previous state. So what that is saying is when she was going to therapy, she was fine. But when her mother was put into the conversation, suddenly she acted like a little child. Right? So again, right there, there's a weird dynamic that we want to explore, a strange dynamic. And then she brought in her father, and then that, of course, could also change the dynamic again, because now there's a mother and the father. So sometimes maybe the child doesn't want to be with one or the other. So when you bring someone in and that main client regresses or whatever, then we realize that something is going on and we want to explore those things. Focus on the self-esteem in the family members and help them to communicate directly and openly with each other. So maybe they're afraid, like the client is afraid of their parents. So instead we try to help them be able to express their feelings with their parents. Of course, as a therapist, you'll be facilitating emotional honesty, right? You're trying to get everyone to be honest and open so that if there are changes that need to be done, then you can actually change it. But if everyone's in denial that there's any problems, really nothing's going to change because they don't believe that there needs to be change. So now we're going to talk about Abraham Maslow's humanistic psychology. So Abraham Maslow is well known in the business psychology because he talks about different levels of change, okay? You need this level to get to the next level, get to the next level, like in a pyramid. So he talks about studying self-actualizing people, which means people who have reached the top, which is like a lot of times in business, right? Whoever becomes a CEO, the president of a major company. How does that work? So what he noticed is that there's a capacity to welcome uncertainty into their lives, which means that there's some things that are unknown, but that person's going to let it come in anyways, because they're going to say, hey, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm curious to see what's going to happen, so let's try something new, right? So again, these are characteristics of people who are self-actualizing. Acceptance of themselves and other people, spontaneity and creativity. Spontaneity means out of the blue, like you don't necessarily always have to pre-plan everything. It's at that moment you're going to make that decision. Need for privacy and solitude. And solitude does not mean like being lonely. Solitude means I need some time alone to think. Okay. Autonomy. Autonomy means being able to make your own decisions. You don't need other people's approval to make a decision. A capacity for deep and intense interpersonal relationships means being able to have really deep bonds with other people. Genuine caring for others, so you do actually care for other people. A sense of humor, you know, you gotta laugh sometimes, right? Inner directedness as opposed to living by other people's expectations. So instead of saying, these are what people expect me to be, you're gonna be yourself, and you know that. And then the absence of artificial dichotomies within themselves. So they don't really try to live under all these specific expectations about work, play, love, hate, weak, strong. You might be a little bit of everything, and that's okay. It's like you are able to be who you are, even though certain things might be negative and then other things are positive. So his hierarchy of needs is really well known. I'm sure you've seen it's a pyramid, and we'll look at the picture next. But I want to explain the different levels. First is physical and survival needs, such as food, water, shelter, and air. So before you can do anything else, everyone needs to have food so they can eat and, live. They also need to drink water, right? And they also need a place to stay or live that's not dangerous. And of course, clean air, because if you live in polluted air, you're going to get sick, right? So once you have all those things, then we can start to think about the next level, which are safety needs. Protection from physical or psychological threat, need for order and structure, and protection from fear and anxiety. Okay, so let's think about the first level. If you don't have food, you're gonna maybe try to steal it. You're mainly gonna try to, get it in any way you can because you're gonna die if you don't, right? So then you're not necessarily worried about safety. Does that make sense? Which is the next level. But once you have food, then you can start to worry about, now that I am full and I'm, healthy, that I can now protect myself now. That's more important now, right? And then after that is belonging and love. So now that you feel safe where you are and you have the food and the air and the water and the shelter and stuff like that, then you feel belonging and love, which means belonging in a membership of something, acceptance, belonging, feeling loved, and feeling wanted, right? That means basically that social animal that we were talking about that we all are. And then once you're able to have relationships with either people that you consider friends or family, then you go to the ego and self-esteem needs. And those are things that are about you now, right? Respecting and liking for self and others, competence, which basically means understanding what's going on, creativity, freedom, and deserve fame. So once you're able to take care of yourself now and achieve those goals, this is what happens, right? You're caring for yourself now. And then, of course, the last part is the need for self-actualization, is to now understand that there's a direction where you're going and you're trying to get to in that direction. It's to do what you must do to become fully yourself, to develop your own individuality, okay? And we think about, let's say, Gandhi, right? Or the Buddha, where they reached nirvana because they finally got to the place where, they think is really good. They're striving for that place and they're basically almost there, okay? So let's look at the image in the next slide. So right here, without the scribbly part, is the different levels that we just talked about. But in our world in 2020, we're going to say, is there Wi-Fi around? And then also, does my battery, is that fully charged or not? Because if I can, then I can't survive, right? Like I don't even want water. or clean air or anything. I want my phone to work and I want to have the internet so that I can do the rest of those things. So obviously that's a joke, but I want you to realize that the basis of this triangle is actually really important in psychology. All right, now let's talk about choice theory approach to personal growth. So we're going to talk about reality therapy, which is another type of therapy. Like we talked about person-centered, Adlerian therapy. Now we're talking about reality therapy. It teaches people how to make effective choices and satisfy their basic needs. It is based on cognitive behavioral model. You've probably heard of cognitive behavioral therapy, right? So again, they're connected. Choice theory, which comes from reality therapy, is everything we do can be explained in terms of our attempts to satisfy our basic needs, such as survival, love, and belonging, power or achievement, and freedom or independence and fun. Remember that hierarchy that we just saw? So choice therapy means that, or choice theory means that we do those things, we make our decisions in our lives because we want to get to that top part of that pyramid. And part of choice theory is also about the fact that humans are social creatures and we need to both receive and give love. Okay? It is challenging because it means we need another person who is willing to cooperate. This is why it's so difficult. To love someone means you need to have someone there with you, right? So that's what they're talking about when it comes to social interactions. And this is actually something that I want to talk to you guys if you plan to become parents or if you have really good friends, okay? But definitely for parents. When you have a child, most likely you love your child. I hope you love your child. And you're going to buy gifts for them. You're going to make them feel good and everything like that. And then sometimes the child will want to do the same thing back to you. Okay. So then they might say, Mom or Dad or, whatever, I want to buy you a present because I love you. Okay. And for a lot of parents, they're going to say, honey, it's okay. You don't have to do that. I know you love me. But what you're actually doing is stifling that child's ability to give love. They know how to receive love because you're giving them things. But because you don't know how to receive love, they're not going to learn how to give love. Okay, so I encourage you, let's say if you do have a child that wants to do that, you can say, you know what, let's go to the 99-cent store. And then why don't you pick something out there that you want to buy for me because you love me. Okay, I want you guys to learn how to give love and also receive love. When someone gives you a compliment, do you say thank you so much for saying that? Or you're going to say, no, 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 that's not really me. That's not really me. Let's say someone thinks that you're really pretty, right? Or very handsome. So then they say that, and you're like, no, you need to get glasses and check out your vision, right? That is because whoever says that, doesn't really know how to receive love. You're deflecting. Why are you deflecting? What is the purpose of that? Why can you not appreciate someone telling you that you are gorgeous? Because you are, right? So again, I want you to start thinking about that when it comes to your own personal life and the people around you. Okay, taking an active stance. You are allowed to feel disappointment when you fail an exam. Will you spend your energy berating yourself, which is basically yelling at yourself and saying you're stupid, oh my gosh, I can't believe, why can't you pass that exam? Or do you spend your energy to reflect on ways to prevent this from happening again in the future? So instead you're going to say, you know what, how did I study that did not help me here? Let me change these things. And so whenever a student or a class has an exam, I usually, when we're in class, I would ask you guys, hey, for those who did really well in the class or for the exam, how did you study? Because sometimes the people who don't know how to study, and believe me, people don't know how to study, don't know how to do it. So by hearing someone who maybe has good study habits, that will help the other person. But that other person has to listen and be aware and understand. All right, are you an active learner? So self-actualization implies that you will be an active learner. When you have a direction to go to, that means you're physically going to move forward, right? Which means you're action-oriented. So you assume responsibility for your education. Do you? You guys are enrolled in this class, so I'm hoping that you are taking responsibility, right? Or are people forcing you to go to school and you really hate it? Right? There's a difference between those two, and there exists in every classroom that we have. Are you one of those people? You question what is presented to you. You apply what you learn in a personally meaningful way. So when you learn the things that you hear in class or when you're reading in the book or you're doing an assignment, are you actually taking it in or are you just doing it so that you can pass the class? Because if you're just doing that, what is the point? You're here to go to school because in a school setting, you're learning, right? So unless you're learning and you're actively choosing to learn, what's the point? You know? And this is why sometimes there are students that I would say, hey, if I had to choose between student A and student B to be my therapist, I would choose student B, but not student A because I know that student doesn't really care about what's going on. Does that make sense? And people can recognize those things. So I want you to start to actively want to learn and to take the information that's being given to you by people who have experience so that you can then grow from there. Okay, what do you expect this course to be like? I expect to talk openly about issues that matter to me. I'm hoping that that's what you're going to say. I expect to get answers to certain problems in my life. I hope I will become a happier person. I hope I will have less fear of expressing my feelings and ideas. I expect to be challenged on why I am the way that I am. I expect to learn more about how other people function. I expect to better understand myself by the end of this course. What do you want most to accomplish in this course? I hope it's a little bit of all of those things. And maybe we can revisit these questions at the end of the semester to see if you really did learn and grow from this experience. All right, what are you willing to do to become actively involved in your learning? Are you willing to say these things? I'm willing to participate in class discussions. I'm willing to read the materials and think about how it applies to me. I'm willing to question my assumptions and look at my values. And I'm willing to spend some time, most days, reflecting on the issues raised in this course. So when you hear some of the interesting things in this class or your other classes, I want you to think about it and say, hey, do I agree with this or do I not agree with it? I'm not expecting you to agree with everything, okay? But I want you to start thinking about certain things saying, hey, you know, that was an interesting point that the professor brought up. So let me think about whether or not I agree with it or not and why, okay? This is how you're going to grow and learn. This is what your clients are going to have to do as well when you guys do therapy, right? So you might as well be familiar and know how these feelings are to wrestle with these ideas and thoughts in your head and then come to a conclusion. Multiple intelligence and multiple learning styles is another thing that we need to also learn. Not everyone is really good at just reading. Some people are better at visual learning, some are more better when they physically do those things, and some people are better when they hear things, right? Or a combination of everything. People differ in how they learn best and in what kinds of knowledge they tend to learn most easily. Behind each learning style may lie basic differences in intelligence. Intelligence is a group of complex, multidimensional abilities and have some strengths in more than one dimension. Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence, the 8 different types of intelligence, is really well known. He is also another really well known psychologist, and he talks about the fact that we all learn in different ways, okay? So this is why having a PowerPoint with photos, with words, hearing me talk this out, you doing these activities like the discussion boards to think about things are all gonna hopefully help you because we're trying to reach you in all these different ways, right? So that we can see which way you can get the information the best so you can understand it. All right, Howard's multiple intelligences are, there's 8 of them, verbal linguistics, musical rhythmic, logical mathematical, visual spatial, bodily kinesthetics, interpersonal, and naturalistic. So I'm not going to explain all that right now because you can go into the textbook and then read up to what all the definitions are, but you can sort of guess what it says, right, or what it means. The 2 that I will bring out right now would be intrapersonal and interpersonal. They are almost the same thing except for 2 letters flipped and then also 1 letter that's different. Intrapersonal is when you are understanding who you are as a person, okay? That's actually a thing. Do you know who you are and feel comfortable with yourself? That would be high interpersonal abilities. Interpersonal is relationships with other people. Are you able to connect with other people in a successful way? Okay, so those are the 2 that I think students tend to get confused. I wanted to point those out. The rest of it, please go into your book and look at it yourself, the definitions. All right, now the last thing I want to talk about is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to control impulses, empathize with others, from responsible interpersonal relationships and developing intimate relationships. So what I'm talking about is your emotional part, not about what you know, but how you feel. And are you able to control your feelings and use your feelings to your benefit? Without emotional intelligence, it may lead to prejudice, self-involvement, aggressive behavior, depression, addictive behaviors, and an inability to manage emotions. So we want someone who has high emotional intelligence when it comes to a person who's going to be working in counseling, right? Because there's going to be a lot of emotions that your client's going to give you, and you need to learn how to balance it and deal with it with your own as well, right? So we're hoping that you, if you don't recognize yourself as having a high emotional intelligence, it's to build on it while you're in college. All right, great, we're done.